national population and size. It might take a few seconds.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third annual SPSS Directions Conference. My name is Ed Hamburg, and it's my honor to once again be your guide to these proceedings. Whether in Japan or North America or here in Europe, Directions is where the leaders in the use of predictive analytics gather to talk about what we do, the successes we have every day, and how we can be even more effective in the years ahead. Directions is indeed a time for us to learn, but it is also an opportunity for us to celebrate. For we've come a long way together, SPSS the company and you, our very best customers and partners. Together we know that now is a great time to be involved with predictive analytics, and how in the future our roles will become even more strategic. The impact we have in our organizations will become even more profound. And the technology we use will become even more powerful. So we truly have a lot to learn and a lot to celebrate in 2 very short days. But how do we begin? In the past, this conference opened with a skit by the SPSS players that portrayed the power and promise of predictive analytics. This year, however, we are raising our opening presentation to yet another level. In the United States, New York is known as the country's first city. Chicago is its second city. And this moniker was taken by a talented group of improvisational comics in the late 1960s, as they established in Chicago a theater company that launched the careers of such comic greats as John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, Gilda Radner, Mike Myers, Bill Murray, and more. Subsequent generations of Second City professionals have continued this remarkable tradition. We've invited this year a few members of the current Second City generation to join us here in Athens to apply their unique talents and perspectives on our world of predictive analytics. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Second City.
Simon. Simon Felder. It's me, Lance. Yeah, Lance Watkins. I haven't seen you since university. What airline are you on?
Oh, none. I'm taking the corporate jet. How about you, flying first class?
Oh, well, the air in first class is kind of stale. But yes, I am, as far as you know.
Okay. Are you going to Athens by any chance for the SPSS Directions Conference on Predictive Analytics?
Predictive analytics. Look, Lance, when you've been around as long as I have, you realize when wild business strategies are productive and when they're not.
Yeah, I know. I've been around too. And I can tell you that predictive analytics has worked wonders for us. Yeah, we're amazing now. We've just opened our 7th office and we have 20,000 employees. Growth has been stunning.
20,000 employees, that's great. If you like a crowded office. Yeah, like a smaller core group. You know, I just brought my son on to learn the ropes when he's not in football training. He's also doing a lot of data entry for us.
Oh, well, good for him. Customer data is gold.
It is. It is?
Yeah, of course, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
What are you doing with your customer data now, Simon?
Well, we store it for one thing, and then we analyze it mostly to make sure there's no outstanding accounts with a balance due, and then we move into phase 2 of the storage process.
Simon, you're wasting one of your most valuable assets. If you apply data mining to that customer data, you can identify target customers.
Well, we like to think of every customer as a target customer.
You can minimize risk.
Hey, no risk, no reward. That's what I always say.
You can increase customer satisfaction.
Look, a satisfied customer is a complacent customer. Yeah, I don't even buy that one. Look, Lance, your theory on predictive analytics may work in theory, but out in the real world, I like to go with my gut instincts.
And just how is your gut?
It's okay. I didn't need to have an ulcer operated on.
Well, at least your gut seems to be one area that's experiencing growth.
That's really funny. That's really funny. Well, Lance, I remember being introduced to SPSS at the university, and I wasn't blown away.
Oh, Simon, the SPSS offers uses far beyond what we studied at university. There's data mining, text mining, decision optimization, feedback management.
Really?
Security check.
Yeah, sure, you have to take the deep dive. I mean, the more you use predictive analytics, the more uses you find for it. You have to think of it as a predictive analytics journey.
Predictive analytics journey? That sounds very thorough.
Well, it is. I mean, that's how you get results.
Huh. Well, you know what they say about results, man. What kind of results?
All kinds of results, Simon. There's significant revenue growth.
Well, our shareholders really like their revenue grown.
Yeah. You'll grow and retain customers.
Oh, we can always use more customers.
And there's increased profitability.
Okay, sir, do you have something on underneath your shirt area?
Yeah, I was a roadie for Robbie Williams.
Take that.
Yeah, take that. Yeah, it was really good.
Okay, move along, please.
Thank you. Look, I hear what you're saying about predictive analytics working for your company, but I'm not sure if it works for my company. I mean, I'm in telecommunications.
I'm in telecommunications too, Simon.
Yeah, but my company's not anywhere near your size.
How do you think we got so big, Simon?
Hey, can you get me into that SPSS Directions Conference?
You know what? I'll make a few calls and see what we can do.
Oh, great. Can I ride your corporate jet?
I don't think so.
I don't have a lot of luggage.
The plane's full, Simon.
I'll serve champagne and sandwiches.
We have someone for that.
We can bring the security guard.
It's good seeing you.
She's really nice.
thanks to Second City, and they will be back a few times over the course of the next couple days. As we move to the next part of our program, I have the following thoughts to offer. David Beckham was born to kick a ball, and Paul McCartney was meant to sing songs. And it was inevitable that Amy Winehouse entered drug rehab, and Jack Noonan was destined to run a software company. Going directly from college to IBM to various executive positions, Jack has played a role in almost every major development in our industry. It was an incredible experience for me to be in the cockpit with him as he piloted SPSS on a flight that would take the company to 10 times its size from his start on the runway. After 15 years, he is now the longest-sitting non-founder chief executive officer of any technology company anywhere in the world. Jack has been my boss, and he's been my mentor, but most importantly, Jack has been my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back and enjoy a conversation with SPSS Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Jack Noonan. Representing you, the audience, this morning in this conversation, it's my pleasure to introduce Federico Cesconi, who heads analytical CRM at Cablecom, the largest cable provider in Switzerland. Federico is responsible for implementing best practices that have been developed from customer insights gained through the use of predictive analytics. Here at Directions, he has gathered suggested questions from various people in the audience, and I'm sure he has a few of his own as well. Please welcome Federico Cesconi.
So, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. You know, I participated in several events from SPSS. When I got the phone calls from Chicago asking me to do this, I was really happy to put some pressure on you and, so I collected a lot of questions from me as a customers, long-time customers, but as well I know SPSS has sent an email to the people in the audience, and I collected also some questions from them, so I will be happy now to give you this question. So I heard from Ed that 15 years that you are in your position, that's a really long time. What has been the most exciting time for you during these 15 years?
Well, Federico, it's got to be now. You know, when I joined the company, we kind of invented real stats real easy, and now we're focused on the predictive enterprise. And we've gone from delivering forward-looking information to individuals, but now we're also embedding that information into business systems. But I think the most exciting about now is that predictive analytics, has come into vogue. Primetime television show Numbers talking about predictive analytics or advanced analytics, and best-selling books like Super Crunchers, which you'll hear from Ian Ayres later today. And at our last Directions conference, we focused on competing on analytics, and before that, we focused on bringing down the house and Moneyball. So there's this high-end analytics stuff has really come into its own, which is terrific. It's exciting. Yeah.
If I look now at SPSS, that's really a picture about statistical software, and that's it. But today, the SPSS family is bigger. You include data mining, text mining, and include also now survey tools, customer feedback management. Is a lot at the end. Is a big change in the last years.
Yeah, well, I kind of look at that as it's been an evolution, but there's this, you know, I'm a car guy, so I like cars, and this is a lot like becoming an auto mechanic. When you go to auto mechanic school, the first week they roll in this big toolbox. And you not only spend the next year learning how to use them, you spend the rest of your life learning how to use them. But also you find that every year there are new tools. You know, so I'm a tool guy too. And every year there's exciting new tools that help you improve your effectiveness of doing the auto stuff, right? And make it go better, faster, smarter, cheaper.
Yeah, definitely. I got some questions from the audience, from the SPSS customers, and they ask a little bit what is happening in the industries. If I check, for instance, I follow the SPSS stocks in the stock exchange, and I've seen always that this goes up, and I'm thinking, okay, something strange is behind. Probably someone is interested in SPSS, could be. But if you consider also the last acquisition of Oracle and SAP, especially, Oracle acquired Hyperion and SAP acquired Business Objects. Do you think there is an implication for SPSS in this area? Do you think there is someone that would like to buy SPSS?
Well, I hope not. But if I look back over the last 40 years, we've had one competitor that's been SaaS. But and if I look back over the history, there's always consolidation going on in the marketplace. And there has been for years. And we go through about this 10-year cycle of consolidation and then building up with new entries to business and then consolidation again. But if I look at this most recent one with the business intelligence guys and the operational software guys kind of coming together, this has made our life a lot easier because you look at the business objects and the Cognos and the Hyperions, they're our partners, and the IBMs and the SAPs and the Oracles, and they're our partners. Well, I just cut my partners in half. But it's made it much easier on us. The way that they're integrating their technology today for us to integrate with them is becoming much easier. Yeah, so I'm actually quite happy with that.
Okay. If you think about your experience at SPSS, what do you consider the most rewarding one during this year?
I think the most rewarding is working with folks like you and other customers around the world that are on this predictive analytic journey. And I use the word journey because I was heavily involved with this in this quality improvement movement in the 70s, where the word journey was used a lot, where it was focused on continuous process improvement, statistical process control was used then. And I look at what's going on in the marketplace today. We've taken similar kind of technology and methodologies and we're moving that to the front office for continuous process improvement by deploying this technology in the business systems, just like we did 25 years ago in manufacturing.
Do you think about some particular customers in this area, or do you have a specific example, except me, of course?
Well, of course. In fact, not to single anyone out, but when today you're going to, in fact, over the next couple of days, you're going to hear from, I think, almost 40 of our customers are going to share with us their case studies. But at the end of this session, we're going to give the Insight Awards, and so those will be the special customers for this event. Yeah.
Okay. Another good question we received from the audience is related to return of investment. And if I think also about my experience, my journey with SPSS software, it's a very important topic because, a lot of guys that use SPSS first has to convince the top management that they will get some revenues out of the investment. So, in your opinion, how are the expectations and how can we maximize the return of investment with SPSS products?
And if I look at the kind of evolution from Real Stats Real Easy to the predictive enterprise, there's always been ROI of using SPSS technology because of its usability and the way it was able to speed up this analytic process. But deploying this stuff into business systems has taken the ROI to a whole new level, there's an exponential increase when you deploy the output of predictive models into business systems. But later on today, you'll hear from Rebecca Wedeman, who's from Nucleus Research, and they do independent studies on return on investment of various software companies. And so there's a kind of an independent view of the kind of ROI you can get from this technology. Yeah.
And as a last trend in the last, I would say, 2-3 years, there is, this trend of the voice of the customers, especially started with the Six Sigma methodology, and now there are enterprise feedback management, there is the Net Promoter Score in place from Harvard Business School, so the voice of the customers is becoming very important and include this vision of the business problems inside the business, so let the customer drive, something like that, you know. I know that you guys have been done this for a long time, and in your opinion, what is new with this new attitudinal information? How can organization take advantage of this, voice of the customers analysis?
Yeah, we've been involved with the market research community, helping them collect data and analyze data for decades. And one of the things that's happened with this enterprise feedback management has been the evolution of the technology, so you can not only use it for surveys, but you can embed it along with our scoring environment into business applications so that you can get just-in-time feedback. So at every point of customer interaction, you can get feedback. And also, when you earn the right in the process of supporting a customer effectively, you can earn the right to gather additional data. And so what this has done is it's turned a way of electronically communicating with the customer in a one-way communication to creating a dialogue where you can actually get feedback in real time. Use that to improve your predictions or your models of what's going on in that occurrence and dramatically improve that interaction. I think the other thing, though, that this technology has done, and this is all about creating communities, and this dimensions technology or collection technology is the best I've ever seen at creating self-serve applications. So various constituents can provide information to organizations in a real-time basis, which is exciting, very, very exciting. Yeah.
Okay, another question that came from the audience. If we think about Web 2.0 and the role that web content analytics can have in Web 2.0 and inside the organization, of course, how SPSS can help companies to capture and capitalize on new channels like mobile marketing and Web 2.0?
Well, for the last number of years, 7 years or so, SPSS has been focused on unstructured data and new data types. This whole area of unstructured data, I think the statistics show that 80% of the data housed within an enterprise is unstructured. And we focused on not just analyzing the unstructured data, but the ability to turn unstructured data into structured data, so you could now integrate that with your existing data mining and analytical stuff. But SPSS is also focusing on these new data types that come out of this information. Recently, we're now embracing and bringing in blog kind of data. So I think the last part of this question focused on the mobile environment and Web 2.0. We're going to see more and more new user interfaces and ways that companies communicate with their vendors or with the various companies, where they communicate with each other. And being able to tap into those new data sources is very, very important to SPSS. And all we're seeing is this exponential growth of data that's just continuing.
So basically you see that the companies will be able to react immediately in the different touch points and in real time.
In real time,
Yeah.
exactly right.
Okay. A popular question from the audience, and you are a predictive, you sell this concept of predictive analytics. So we think that you can see in the future, basically. So now, if you are really able to see in the future, where do you see SPSS in 5 or 10 years?
I look at the changes that SPSS has gone through over the last 15, 16 years, and they're dramatic, but they're also evolutionary. But one of the things I see that's happening over the next 5 years is significant adoption of this technology by IT organizations. Historically, it's been the line of business folks that have been involved. It's predominantly marketing for our kind of technology. And it's used for all kinds of research and analysis, but more and more I'm seeing competency centers being built in organizations to focus just on this technology. That management teams and IT organizations are understanding that they've got an asset in this predictive analytic activity and turning the artifacts into assets. But the most exciting one is this embedding it in business systems so that you don't have to replace the business system to change your process. You can embed this stuff in and make those kind of changes on an ongoing basis. If there's anything that's exciting, it's this adoption of it. But I also think something else has come into vogue, that we all seem to care more about people. We care about our customers, we care about our employees, we care about our vendors, we care about our suppliers. And embracing this people data thing that's been a heritage for SPSS for so long is it's very, very exciting. So this is all about if you can understand people's attitudes and behaviors, and then you can use that information to change them, to improve interactions, everybody wins. Revenue goes up, costs go down. It's a very, very good time to be in the marketplace. And so the evolution that I see is the adoption of this by organizations, and I'm sure Ayres is going to share some more of that later on this afternoon.
Yeah. I have here a specific question from the audience. A member of the audience asked if you have some plans of offering SPSS in a software as a service model. Do you have some idea to share with us?
Well, we do that today, especially in our data collection software, in our online services function. But also, we're working with one of our customers today. It's quite surprising that they have very unique data, and they want to supply that data to their customers in a hosted environment with SPSS as the analytical tools. And so because the architecture of this technology supports that today, that we can put our server technology next to the data, and the client technology can access that from literally anywhere in the world. So I think the most exciting thing is, we support this, but we're also seeing now that where you have data and you want to provide that in an information form, the architecture of our technology allows that today. This is terrific stuff. Yeah.
Okay, Jack, I think we are more or less at the end. Do you have any last words that you would like to share with the audience, or?
Well, I guess everybody, I'd like to thank you for putting up with me today and challenging me a little bit. But I guess I'd like to thank the nearly 40 customers today that are sharing their successes and their work that they're doing with SPSS. And I guess I'd like to thank all of you here today for your interest in predictive analytics. So again, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much to Jack and to Federico, and for those of you who submitted questions. It's now my pleasure to introduce our featured keynote speaker. If you were to look in an English language dictionary for the word polymath, you would find that it means a person of great and varied learning. And in the very best of these dictionaries, you should also find the picture of Ian Ayres. Ian is a recognized innovator at the intersection of economics and law. most notably as an expert on methods of prediction and the use of data in decision-making. He has a gift for combining rigorous training with common-sense perspectives to address difficult and sometimes very controversial business, political, and social issues. With a law degree from Yale and a PhD in economics from MIT, Ian is a professor at Yale Law School as well as in its School of Management. In addition to being a popular columnist and media commentator, he has authored over 100 articles as well as 9 books, the most recent of which is his bestseller, Super Crunchers: Why Thinking by the Numbers is the Best Way to Be Smart. And in this book, Ian describes a revolutionary trend in the way critical decisions are being made at the highest levels of business and government throughout the world. This is a trend with which we in this room are not only very much familiar, but are also very much a part. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Ian Ayres.
Hi, it's great to be here. I did my first number crunching way back when at MIT using SPSS. This is back in the days when the CPU charges were so expensive that they made the grad students work at 2 a.m. when it was cheap. So it's like coming home here to be able to speak with other SPSS users. And I thought I'd start with a story of predictive analytics going to the movies. So I don't know how many of you saw The Interpreter. It was a modestly successful film that starred Nicole Kidman. And I want to tell you, though, about something that happened before a single frame of this movie was shot. A company called Epigogics had the audacity to predict how many tickets The Interpreter would sell in the United States. They predicted $69 million worth of tickets. And in a story that was broken, by the way, by Malcolm Gladwell in the New Yorker, turns out they did a pretty good job. The Interpreter actually sold $73 million worth of tickets. And this wasn't an anomaly. It was part of a larger experiment where they predicted the ticket sales of 9 different movies before any of the movies were filmed. And what made this an especially cool experiment, at the same time, the studio made its own predictions about what the movies would sell and what they would gross. And Epigogics wasn't perfect. They only were accurate on 6 of the 9 movies. But that was twice the success rate of the studio, which only got 3 out of the 9 right. So how in the world can you go about making a prediction about a movie that hasn't been made yet? Well, they used neural network prediction, by the way, which of course you can make neural network models and make predictions with neural networks in SPSS. This is an excellent example from an SPSS project. And what you do is you code up 200 variables about past movies and how many tickets those past movies sold, and you train a model, and then you put in the information about this current script, plus information about the actors and the directors, and it will come forward and give you a prediction. And by the way, turns out that the identity of the actors doesn't matter much. And you'd be surprised to know that location does matter. But in fact, Epigogic goes beyond just making predictions about the script it was given. It goes forward and makes predictions about alternative scripts. And indeed, in this example, they predicted that if The Interpreter had been rewritten to add in a young sidekick for Nicole Kidman, that it would have sold $12 million more in tickets. And if they had emphasized New York City and the UN more, it would have sold a $5 million more in tickets. And one of the cool things about neural networks, for those in the audience that have played with them, it's massively nonlinear, and I believe Epagogix predicted if they had done both these things, it wouldn't have been 17 million more, it would have been about $20 million more in ticket sales. And part of the point here of the story is if Epagogix can succeed in predictive analytics in a pretty difficult context, it should start increasing our interest that it can be used for other predictions in everyday life. To me, this is an example of a new kind of a wisdom of the crowds. The old wisdom of the crowds, which is only about a decade old itself, had to do with using people's conscious predictions. And I'm, by the way, a great fan of prediction markets. And you know, the old wisdom of the crowds is if I had a jar of jelly beans here, and I asked you all to predict how many jelly beans were in the jar, the average prediction would be a pretty good guess of how many jelly beans. But if you think about it, if I asked you all to read the script of The Interpreter and make a prediction about cells, it wouldn't be a very good prediction. And the new wisdom in the crowds is going out and grabbing the embedded wisdom in past behavior. All right, and most of the users in this audience, that's what you've been doing in a variety of different ways. Another example of this predictive analytics is with regard to music. Pandora.com, they go out and code the attributes of different songs. I put in that I like Bruce Springsteen, and they come back with this song. It's called Idaho by the Bodines, and I like it. And I don't know exactly why, but it works for me. Also works when my daughter puts in Fergie. She comes back with songs that she likes. So both of these are examples of the rise of data-driven decision-making. And in field after field after field, decision makers are relying on data instead of intuition and traditional expertise. Why is it happening now? Well, we just heard there are new tools that are coming along that are actually improving the quality of predictions. But I want to stress something else that's an even more basic reason why I think the revolution is occurring today. This is my nephew Marty, and his favorite T-shirt says on the front. Well, see if you guys can read it on the screen up here. And most people read this to say there are 10 kinds of people in the world, but Marty, who's a programmer, says no, there are those who understand binary and those who don't. We're in this age where data is digital, and that it's becoming much, much easier to collect it, and particularly cheaper to store it and to mash it together. And so we have these data sets that are monstrously large. One of the things that the general public has to get used to is the term terabyte and petabyte. And tera actually comes from the Greek word for monster. And having these monstrously large data sets are allowing people to crunch numbers, data sets of a size we haven't seen before, and the impact on decisions is happening with a speed and a scale that is definitely new. So I'm going to talk in this to you today about two techniques, regressions and randomization. And my basic claim is that if any large organization is not using both of these techniques, you're presumptively messing up. And by regression, I actually just mean a variety of machine learning tools, which would include neural networks. But you should mine historical data. Many of the people in this audience are, of course, already doing that. But I'm going to be in a bit pushing you on the second technique, which is a lot more use of randomized experiments. But let's stay with regressions for a minute. Here, this is a picture of Orley Ashenfelter. He's one of the great econometricians in the world. And he also has a passion for wine. And what you see before you is the output of a very simple regression, trying to predict the quality of Bordeaux wine. And this is not a very fancy regression, just has 3 right-hand side variables. And and this is too much distance between us, but let me try to pick out somebody in the audience. You, sir, right here. Can you nod your head for me? You're right in the front row. You're not, I'll tell you what, I see a nod over there. Yeah, so raise your hand for me. Yeah, right there. Okay, yeah, you were, okay, thank you. Answer a question for me. So you see up here on the screen, matter of fact, could you yell out your name? Great. Would you now look up here at the variable average growing temperature. And my question, oh my God, this is really a hard question because in reformatting, my question for you is, what is the impact of a higher growing temperature on the quality of wine? And this has become a much harder question. I might even let you off the hook here, because you know what makes it so hard is the PowerPoint has thrown in a minus in front of that and a plus in front of that. So which is the impact of a higher growing temperature on wine? I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to ask you a different question in a second. Okay? This is just too unfair. It's supposed to be a positive coefficient, and that suggests that a higher growing temperature increases the quality of Bordeaux wines. And a convenient truth is that this last decade with global warming has been an excellent year for Bordeaux wines, because as the growing temperature increases, the quality of Bordeaux wines has gone up and up and up. And the fact that Orly Ashenfelter has been good at predicting Bordeaux wines has not made him a favorite among the wine crowd. One of his great competitors, Robert Parker, has said many unfavorable things about Orly. And this I emphasize because it's an example of what I call the iron law of resistance. That when super crunching comes into a field, you're almost always going to get people that push back and that don't accept it. But there's an interesting thing about Robert Parker. His predictions have gotten systematically better over time. And he doesn't admit it, but to me there's strong evidence that he's taking Orly's variables more into account. He's paying more attention to weather and to rain and to growing temperature. And by the way, there is something that's powerfully similar between what Orly Ashenfelter is doing on wine and what Epigogics is doing with regard to film. They're both trying to predict the quality of very immature products. Orly tries to predict the quality of a Bordeaux wine before anybody has tasted it. Epigogics tries to predict the quality of a film before anybody has watched it, before it's even been shot. Indeed, this is quite similar to what's going on in Moneyball, where Billy Beane is trying to predict the quality of another immature product, a baseball player. Again, in all these cases, by paying attention to the new wisdom of the crowds, the information embedded in historical behavior, you can make powerful predictions. So what's going on here with this predictive analytics? It's not just behind Epigogics and Orly Ashenfelter's wine predictions and Pandora's music predictions. By the way, it's also what's behind eHarmony's predictions. This dating service is very different. The commercials may seem similar, but in a traditional dating service, they'd ask you who you wanted to go out with and match you with that. But eHarmony has a very different model. They give you a personality test, and then they run regressions on what kind of personalities work well with other personalities. And they will end up matching you with people that you might not have ever thought you'd be compatible with. But it's also, of course, behind this conference. SPSS, in example after example, has used predictive analytics, regressions, and other kinds of ways of mining historical data to improve decisions. It's going beyond the idea of just prediction to action. And so the Chelsea Building Society has increased mortgage customer retention rates. Sparbola has improved its cross-selling and its upselling. Yorkshire Water has improved its flood risk detection by 25 to 30%. So this is not just cool academic number crunching. This is number crunching that is driving better decisions. And one thing that's very powerful, and of course SPS has been at the forefront of, is that it's democratizing data mining, and that it's making the results easily available to a broader group of people. This is an example of the kind of easily digestible output that was done on a neural network prediction with regard to the drivers, the underlying influencers of toy sales. If you have a toy department, what's going to be the factors that improve or decrease the amount of dollars spent? And one of the I can't overemphasize this slide. One of the coolest things about regressions and other kinds of statistical data mining is that the very process that produces a prediction simultaneously produces a measure of how precise that prediction is. And this is a huge difference between descriptive statistics, dashboards, which are very powerful. Whenever I go into a project, I start out figuring out the sum stats and drilling down and doing cross tabs. But when you go from descriptive statistics to predictive statistics, the very method of making the prediction should be producing for you a measure of precision as well, of how precise that prediction is. And as a matter of fact, one of the tests here that you should be asking yourself do I actually have measures of precision on my predictions? If you just have a customer credit score, or if you're scoring but don't have measures of precision, then I want to push you. You're not really on the edge of super crunching. A great example of this kind of prediction with precision comes from Faircast. It's a website for people traveling in the U.S., and it makes a prediction about whether a future flight, the fare is going to go up or down. And the prediction is quite easy. You can see in this example that downward green arrow is the prediction that the airfare is going to go down between now and when you take off. And so if the airfare is going to go down, it suggests you wait to buy your ticket. And if it predicts that the airfare is going to go up, if you see an upward arrow, it says buy the ticket now before the airfare goes up. But what's so cool to me is that they not only give you the prediction, but if you can see this, Faircast also tells you its confidence. On this type of prediction, they tell you that they're right more than 80% of the time. But see, they don't always, and how does Faircast do this? Well, they crunch numbers on terabytes worth of historic fare data. That's how they do it. But on some routes, they don't have as much information, and they may come back and say, we're only right on this kind of prediction 60% of the time. So being able to give you the prediction and the level of precision, that's something that human experts almost never do or do well. And as a matter of fact, Faircast will even sell you some insurance. They'll stand behind their prediction. By the way, there's a new website that I just got an email about called DelayCast, that if you enter in your flight, it'll make a super crunch prediction about whether your flight is going to be delayed or not. So that's what I have to say to you about the first tool of these two twin towers, regressions. But I want to turn now to talk about the second tool. Again, it's not a groundbreaking new tool. Randomized trials have been used in medicines for close to a century, but it's very much a complementary tool. When historical data runs out, when you don't have information on a particular vector of your matrix, proactively going out and making data with a randomized trial, a randomized experiment, is an incredibly natural way a complementary way to get information. So if you want to know whether a drug works, you take 1,000, you give 1,000 patients the drug, and at random 1,000 patients you don't give the drug to, and you just compare averages. This kind of thing is being used, of course, out in business all the time on the internet. And now, sir, you're going to get back. Now you're back on some duty here. All right. So this is actually the elements of a web page that Monster.com used. They did a randomized experiment that kept a landing page all the same except for one element of it, one part of the page. Some employers saw the upper element, and some employers saw the lower element. And so your job now, are you willing to work with me on this, is to tell me which do you think was more effective at signing up employers? The upper or the lower? The lower, and you and I had exactly the same view. Why do you think the lower is better? Say it again? It feels good. Right. I wouldn't have said feels good, but I like the curved icons. I think it's pretty. Okay? But you and I did a bad job. Employers spent 8% more when they saw this. And this, by the way, this simple example is kind of the holy grail of predictive analytics because it's going toward causality. More than 100,000 people saw the same web pages, except the only difference is that half of them saw the upper element, half saw the lower element. And randomization means that you can be pretty confident that every other attribute of these viewers was the same except for this treatment, that some saw the upper and some saw the lower. So we have a very strong sense that seeing the upper is what caused them to spend the more money. If we looked at any other aspects, such as the height of the viewers, we're supremely confident that both would have the same bell curve of distribution, or the proportion of the uppers and the lowers that were left-handed, same proportions. Because random assignment, the reason they call it a random controlled trial, is randomization gives you a beautiful control group on every other dimension besides what you're treating on. And it's become incredibly cheap to do randomized controls experiments on the internet. And here's what's really great. It allows you to go to real-time optimization, to go beyond prediction to actually automated action. On Google AdWords, you can run a randomized experiment between two different ads, and it will automatically start switching you toward the ad that is more successful. Another example from the internet, here's a company called musicianfriends.com, and they had, to begin, they had a one-size-fits-all central element to their web page. And they mostly sell guitars, and so this started off just being generally a picture dominated by guitars, and they wanted to run a randomized experiment where they said, instead of showing everybody the same picture, what if we showed people different pictures based on what their search term is that drove them to our site? They call it affinity contingent element. And so if you came to the site and you were interested in drums, what if we showed you immediately a picture of drums? What would happen there? Well, it turns out pretty dramatic impacts. The click-through rates went up on drums by 50%. By the way, it wasn't such a big lift with regard to guitars, because remember, guitars is what they started out with, mostly a guitar element. But overall, a randomized experiment about contingent alternatives led to an overall increase of 15% revenue increase per visitor. And something that while I'm a great fan of regressions, and I've done dozens of studies where I've crunched numbers on everything from stolen cars to tests of race and gender discrimination. At the end of the day, one of the great powers of randomized testing is how transparent and easy it is to communicate. And so when you run a regression, at the end of the day, it's a kind of trust me statistics. When you tell somebody else, they're going to push back to control for enough stuff, and they're going to wonder, did you somehow in the back room cook the data? In comparison, when I just went through this example about Monster.com, and I tell you, look, 100,000 people saw one page, at random 100,000 people saw another page, everything was the same except for this one element, and it had 8% higher click-through rate, or in that case, 8% higher revenues. It's very powerful. You don't have much to talk about, and there's the acceptance is much higher. Here's another example of a randomized test. So it turns out that eHarmony uses both of the tools. I told you they use regressions to figure out who to match you with, but they also run randomized experiments. So my big thesis here today is if you're not doing both regressions and randomization, you're presumptively screwing up. And matter of fact, I guess a sub-thesis, even if you're doing some randomization, you're probably not doing enough of it. Here's something that eHarmony did. They wanted to test whether having more information would lead people to register more on their site. Their basic model, they want people to come to their site to register before they can do anything else. And so the control page here, the regular page, doesn't let you do much else until you register. They wanted to say, well, what if we give them just a few extra links that are circled over here on the left-hand side? Would that help them? Would that help them get more registrations? And the woman to the right, to the left, you. Yes. So what do you think? More information, does it help or does it hurt eHarmony register? Don't take too long. More? What? Does it help? What? Less information. And you, unlike your colleague, did a very good job. Less information leads to more registrations, right? That people, when they get the more information, they get distracted and they click away. So if you care about registration, you wouldn't give them the more information. But here's an interesting thing. Turns out that more information does way better in Canada. And one of the reasons is at this time, I want to caution here, after the fact, after the randomized test is done, you can tell yourself stories. I'm not always clear that I trust the stories. I trust that there's something going on, but I don't know why. But here, a nice story is that in Canada at this time, eHarmony wasn't running any commercials, and people didn't know what the product was, so giving them some information was actually helpful on the registration. In the United States, they're spamming us with commercials all the time. We know what it is, and so there, information doesn't help. The bigger picture, though, is you can do a randomized experiment, and then after the fact, you can go into regression mode, and you can start crunching the data to look for subsets of for trends within the randomized experiment. Here's another very powerful example. A big question that comes up time and time again is whether online marketing drives or cannibalizes offline sales. So when you go out and you do a 10% off email blitz, does that, and even if that gets you online sales, what does it do to your brick and mortar sales? Does it drive people to the store, or does it cannibalize them so that they don't buy from the store? You're losing business when you store business when you drive them to the internet. Very basic question. If you want to know the ROI on internet promotions, you need to know the answer to this. How do you do it? Well, one way is to do a simple randomized experiment. You randomly turn on and off online marketing promotions to particular cities or particular areas. And then you sit back and you keep track of what happens to the brick and mortar sales or to the telephone sales in that area. And it gives you, if you have enough areas, again, the randomization is going to give you a very powerful control group. One of the problems here, there are lots of organizations saying, oh, we run experiments, but for some reason there are a lot of managers that are unwilling to give up control to the flip of a coin. That they'll say, oh no, I picked out the 10 stores where they do that. And as soon as the managers pick them out, they've just screwed up. All right? Because they're going to cherry pick. I don't trust that they actually pick the right 10 to turn it on and the right 10 to turn it off. Again, this is a place where there's this democratization of data mining. Google is giving out a service where anybody can set up a randomized experiment on their own web pages. And while this kind of a service isn't very valuable for the kind of organizations in the audience, let me tell you, in less than an hour, I set up a randomized experiment on my homepage. And I don't even know how to code in HTML. It's just rather amazing. I know how to use a WYSIWYG editor, but Google gave me all the code, which is gobbledygook to me, and told me where to jam it into my web page code, and before you know it, I have run an experiment over alternative views of my landing page. And this isn't the experiment that I ran, but this shows you what Google gives back to you. And what's powerful about it is you can see this is true super crunching because it's precision as well as prediction. It not just tells you, it gives you what the prediction is. We see in the upper set of rows that variation 2 is winning. And in the second experiment, you can see that variation 1 is winning. It gives you that confidence interval, that green bar, just like Faircast, you have a sense of the confidence behind the prediction. So I want to be clear, though, that one of the places that you should expand your mind, a lot of people in the audience might even be saying, ho hum, I know about these randomized tests in marketing, our firm is doing it. I want to emphasize that this randomized testing is not just about marketing. And to step back, you should, if I haven't said it now 3 times, the big claim here is that organizations should be doing both types of data crunching, super crunching. They should be using regressions, and they should be using randomized testing. So what? Well, if you think about sports, the revolution in number crunching has only gotten it half right. There's just tons of data mining going on in professional sports with Moneyball, and it's spread from baseball to basketball and football, soccer. But here's the mind-blowing thing. Until about 3 months ago, there had never been in the history of the world a randomized test of sports strategy. And in fact, this is a test you can give to yourselves. Can you think of what a randomized test of sports strategy would be? Right now, internally, and if you can't, that shows that I think your mind isn't really open to this. Because there are just tons of randomized tests of sports strategies. As a matter of fact, I put up a posting of this at the New York Times, challenging people to come tell me if there had ever been a randomized test. No one has yet come forward with an example of it, but what I offered to help teams if they were interested, and I'm now working with teams at the high school, college, and professional level to do randomized tests. And now, by the way, let me give you an example of some of these things. In baseball, there's a question of who calls the pitches. In some professional teams, it's the catcher that tells the pitcher what to pitch. And in some teams, it's the manager that tells the pitcher what to pitch. Well, here you can do a double-blind experiment. You have lots of people coming to bat. Half the time, you could have the catcher call the pitches, half the time the manager, and just pay attention to whether the hitter gets a hit. As a matter of fact, you could do a randomized experiment that divides it even further, that sometimes lets the pitcher call the pitches, or sometimes lets SPSS call the pitches. Maybe number crunchers at this conference could do a better job than the managers. And the way we would know is by doing a randomized experiment. Okay? Would it help to tell, could we make progress on whether tennis players serve to the forehand or the backhand? Well, you could run a randomized experiment to try to find out. Here's another place where randomized experiments could be used. They should be used in your HR departments. Do commitment bonds help people quit smoking? So what in the world is a commitment bond? Well, it might be a variety of contracts where people commit to do something. They might put down $50 and promise to quit smoking. If they quit smoking, they get the $50 back. If they don't, it goes to a charity. All right? Well, it turns out that commitment bond in a randomized trial is shown to be very effective at quitting smoking. That people that don't take up the bond have a 5% success rate. Those that do take up the bond have about a 40% success rate, which is not a silver bullet, but it's substantial progress. And your HR departments could be trying to see whether commitment bonds help people lose weight or quit smoking. By the way, I'm very self-interested in this. I help go out and found a new company called Stick.com that just has launched in January this year, and we've taken in over $250,000 in commitment bonds. But we're deeply engaged in crunching numbers and doing randomized experiments to see if it works. I also, crunching numbers starts at home. I not just founded this company, but I used commitment bond myself to lose weight last year. So this is the actual graph of what happened. The red line is my day-by-day weight last year. And the good news is not that I just lost 10% of my body weight. I've done that before in my life. I've been a yo-yo. I've yo-yoed though. I've lost weight and I've always put it back within a year. What's really amazing is how flat the red line stayed after I took the weight off, and it's continued to this day. And what's that blue line? That blue line is my commitment line. If I put $500 at risk every week last year, and if my weight ever went above the $500, I lost it to charity. So it works in a randomized trial with regard to smoking. It worked on weight with regard to me. Will it work more generally? But I actually have a hypothesis here that these commitment bonds to exercise or to lose weight or to quit smoking, I predict that they also would help keep your employees on the job longer. That even though the commitment isn't to keep working, but I bet it would reduce the turnover in frontline jobs. I even bet that maybe even with regard to customers, that if you offered, if a brokerage house offered commitment bonds, doesn't seem to have much to do with brokerage, but they might have less turnover of their customers, higher retention rate, because psychologically the customers get committed to the bonds. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. By the way, if anybody wanted to, I'd love to help run a randomized experiment to find out. This idea of running randomized experiments is a place actually where I think government is ahead of business. There have been hundreds of randomized controlled trials by government and by nonprofit organizations about all kinds of public policies. My favorite comes from Mexico. This was more effective. So people that search Google for data mining and about 100 other words, they were shown literally these two different boxes, and lo and behold, supercrunchers had a 63% higher click-through rate. That's so much for my own intuition. So what's going on here? You can do data-driven decision-making, but are we really confident that it's better than the experts? Well, it turns out there have been hundreds of studies that have actually done a meta-experiment on whether humans can make better predictions without the aid of statistics, and time again, it's shown that they do a poor job, or at least no better a job. One of my favorite examples actually comes from the United States Supreme Court. They did a very powerful perspective test where in one corner they put 83 legal experts who were trying to predict all the votes of the 2003 term of the United States Supreme Court of each of the 9 justices. And these were real experts. About a third of them had clerked on the Supreme Court. Many of them were leading practitioners. And in the other corner, they had a very crude statistical algorithm. And what you're actually seeing on the screen here is the statistical algorithm for Justice O'Connor. And to see how crude it is, I don't know how good the screen comes across, but it starts out, the flowchart says it asks the first question, was the lower court opinion liberal? And if the answer to that question, which had to be coded in advance by a human, if the answer is that yes, it was liberal, the flowchart predicts that Justice O'Connor is going to reverse. That's it. Okay? It doesn't know anything about, the experts knew the specific legal issue in the case. This doesn't know anything like this. This has very crude controls. But it shouldn't surprise you that this did a better job predicting than the legal experts. And it particularly did a better job of predicting the swing votes. And what's going on here? How can it be that legal experts, true legal experts, could do a worse job? And what I want to say is that humans do a bad job of putting the right weights on the underlying influences. And an example of that from the Supreme Court, every legal expert, every U.S. lawyer knows one thing, that the Supreme Court hates California. Right? They really hate California right now. Or more technically, they hate the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They're much more likely to reverse decisions coming out of the Ninth Circuit than any other place. So the experts know that, but they're not willing to put a big enough weight on that simple variable. And instead, humans tend to fall in love with their pet intuitions, and they put too much weights on this. Matter of fact, one of the biggest problems with this, where I think we get it just really get it backwards, is we tend to want to get an expert when it's a very subtle and complicated process. And that's actually, humans do well when it's making predictions about simple things. If there's a Coke can out there and I ask you what will happen if you shake it up and open it. That's like a one-factor process. And humans do a great job of making that kind of prediction. But when there are 5 or 10 or more underlying influences, that's when we shouldn't be relying on human experts. And if possible, that we should rely more on statistical algorithms to put the right weights on the predictions. We tend to, if a flight was canceled and there were just 2 passengers that were both looking for a flight on the next flight out, that they'd give that seat, the only seat might go to the passenger that had more frequent flyer miles. But under the new world of CRM, there are some airlines that might give that last seat not to the person with more frequent flyer miles, but they instead would use their CRM algorithms to predict which consumer who is most unhappy. And it might be that I have fewer frequent flyer miles, but I've had 2 flights canceled on that airline in the last 6 months. And they may predict that I'm closer to jumping ship, and so they might give me the next flight out. Now and there may be nothing wrong with that, but I think it would come as a surprise to a lot of consumers that. And indeed, one of the ways you might think about this is an aspect of happiness discrimination. They predict the happiness of a variety of customers, and then they discriminate against the happiest customers. Or you could also think of this as a kind of corporate Zoloft that CRM is trying to even out the happiness of their customers. So to the extent that you're trying to increase everybody's happiness, that's fine. But when there's circumstances when you're trading off happiness of one customer versus another, it at least raises some questions that the public may push back on. So, what does the future hold? I think the best firms are going to be using both regressions and randomization to make predictions about the future. And I'm definitely not here to say that this is the end of intuition. Intuitions and coming up with hunches are still play a pivotal role in making good predictions, but increasingly you have to be willing to put your intuitions to the test. Thank you very much.
We can bring up the house lights, and we can have the people's, my colleagues circulate for the audience. While the first question is coming out of the audience, let me ask you something. In your book, you describe a technique of you call piggybacking. And piggybacking is, for those of us who live in the real world doing data analysis, doing randomization is often problematic. For example, there are laws that keep you from raising some children in cages and some in nice environments and seeing which ones are right. But you described a technique called piggybacking that enables you to kind of use data collected for one method for kind of quasi-experimental work.
Yes, there are now dozens of studies that exploit randomized assignment that happens independently in the world. So some universities randomly assign roommates in freshman year, and so there have been very cool studies to say, what's the impact of being assigned to a fat roommate? And it turns out that it tends to increase your weight. Or being assigned to a roommate who works harder. It tends to make you work harder. There have been random assignments of legal cases to public defenders versus private attorneys in Oklahoma. And in Oklahoma, they find out that actually being assigned to a public defender is likely to get you a shorter sentence. There's a great study about the impact of the 20-year impact of the Vietnam draft. Randomly, some people were drafted and others weren't. What happens to their wages 20 years later?
Let's say, like in Faircast site, if many people start to use it, it will change the real flow of the ticket price.
I do think that it can, and Faircast is a great example that what you would imagine that if Faircast becomes very popular, that the airlines are going to react against it. And there are a couple things that come to mind. Is none of these both regressions and randomizations, these are not do them once and you're done, but that you have to be embarked on a dynamic process of re-optimization, because Faircast has to wonder about whether its data has become stale. Making predictions in a world where you're in a strategic game with the other side, it makes it harder to make predictions. Another answer to your question, though, is it raises the issue of, in another sense, of whether super crunching is going to help consumers or not. Right now, we see lots of companies around this room that are doing super crunching to increase profits, and generally that helps consumers with service. I'm a little bit concerned about super crunching on price. That's a place where consumers might not be helped. But Faircast is a great example how there's going to be sites that have already come to the aid of consumers on super crunching price. And we're going to see a war over price super crunching by both sellers and buyers, and where that ends up, I think there are definitely going to be impacts, but whether it ends up generally favoring buyers or sellers, it's to be seen. I'm much more agnostic about that, but it's going to be a world where buyers, it's dangerous to be asleep if you're a buyer, that you could be super crunched on price. But it's not going to be that hard. You don't have to. You can use places like Faircast to help you out.
My name is Hans Donkers, and I really like human intuition. So my question is: has there ever been a randomized experience of experiment on human intuition, and how information influences, or data you get influences your intuition?
So I'm also a great fan of intuition. To me, though, it is a precursor of super crunching, that the best decision makers actually should toggle back and forth between their intuitions, and then you crunch numbers, and actually the crunching numbers actually will often lead to a result that makes you scratch your head and come back to another hypothesis. So, and there's some great examples in the book about the power of intuition letting us see things that we haven't seen before. But there have been randomized studies that compare raw intuition-based decisions with statistical analysis. And basically, in about 200 studies, about 6% of the time, the unaided human intuition / experience. About 6% of the time, the humans beat out the statistical algorithm. And the remaining part of the 94% of the time, you can split that in half. Half the time, it's not a statistically significant difference either way, but the other half of the time, about 50% of the time, the statistical algorithm beats by a statistically significant amount the unaided human intuition. And just to say one more word about this, well, what about if you give experts the aid of statistical prediction, but still give them the control? The evidence suggests that the human intuition aided by statistics does better.
Your title gets changed from, you really in the end aren't talking about the end of intuition, but really it's how intuition can be wedded and informed by analysis, and just not let it carry off like it has been in the past.
And put it more in a number crunchy way, there are literal infinities of possible underlying influences for any process, and there's never enough data to statistically test an infinite number of right-hand side variables. So you have to use, one of the technical reason why we have to use our intuition is you have to limit the number of right-hand side variables to the ones that make the most intuitive sense. They're too small to be worth it to spend the time and effort. And there are other decisions that are incredibly important, but that you don't have historical data to make a relevant prediction. And sometimes you don't have the ability to use the second tool of randomized trials. But one of the questions to ask is, those are different sets. Sometimes you can do randomized trials even if you don't have historical data. Well, I think a lot of the times we say, oh, I don't have the historical information, therefore I can't analyze the question. The historical information is going to be data crunching. The regression is going to be particularly valuable when you have lots of transactions that have some similarity to them. And it's not going to, but that won't help you if you're going to decide whether to do a space trip to Mars. And also, there are going to be places where you're not going to do randomized experiments. If you really know something, you shouldn't do a randomized experiment on it. I don't think you should do a randomized experiment on whether parachutes work or not. Because, but there are a lot of things. But to say that it can't tell everything, I was actually just talking with a major insurance company 3 days ago, and they were giving pushback. Oh, we really can't do randomized experiments. I said because people say, well, when we know what a policy works, we want to do it for everybody. And I said, well, so do apologies work? And you got lots of claims. Does it help to apologize? And they have no idea. All right. And so why don't you do a randomized experiment on whether an apology works? By the way, and Continental Airlines did a randomized experiments on apology, big impact on sales. All right. And by the way, I say that to all of you. If you ever screw up with regard to your customers, do you apologize? Does it work? We don't really know some basic things. That would be a place where you can still get value.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ayres.
It is a big problem out of time, so. Alright, cheers then, see you later.
Hey, I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, no, sorry. My fault completely, sorry.
Couldn't have predicted that, huh? Predicted that. Henry Hinckley, Cleveland, Ohio. How are you?
Oh, good. Rob David is Global Corp out of London.
They had conference bags at the entrance, so I got you one.
Oh, thank you so much. Rob, this is my wife, Phyllis. Couldn't keep her away. Phyllis, this is Rob. He works for Global Corp.
Ooh, what a coincidence. I was just reading about your company while I was surfing the web at the cyber cafe. I love your firm's work with predictive enterprise solutions.
Isn't she a peach?
Yeah, she sure is. I'm sorry, I didn't catch, what company are you guys with?
We're not with a company. No.
Oh, look! We're right in front of the product experience room.
Oh, honey, did you remember to sign us up for one of those 30-minute one-on-one demonstrations?
Well, of course I did.
Well, actually,
Wow, it is more amazing than I could have ever imagined. Hey, could you take a picture of us in front of it there, Rob?
Oh,
here you go.
certainly.
Take a picture
All right.
of us. Here we go.
okay, count of three, say, ta-da.
Ta-da! All right, thank you. Oh, thanks, mate.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, so if you're not with the company, are you private consultants or journalists?
Oh, no, we're on vacation.
Holiday?
Oh, sure, yeah, same thing. We thought we could go to the Greek Isles, but then we figured, why go there when we can come to the SPSS Directions Conference? Harry said it would be like going to Analytics Isles.
Right, that's why.
I just don't know if we're going to be able to fit it all in. I mean, we need to go check out all the new SPSS products and technology, not to mention the new complementary technology from other vendors, and of course, the Predictive Enterprise Solutions booth. Yeah.
Well, that is all great, but I do not want to miss a chance to go shopping.
Oh, now that I could have predicted.
No,
I'm sorry, shopping. Are you two going to the Plaza or?
the Plaza? No. Why would we go there when we've got the SPSS store right here? There's T-shirts and backpacks, and even signed copies of Ayres' book.
Honey, brainstorm. We should get a bunch of those as souvenirs for the kids.
Oh my gosh, what a great idea!
Thank you.
I can't imagine anyone not liking that.
Oh,
Yeah, I wouldn't want to live in a world where people didn't. Actually, boy, you two have actually got me excited about the SPSS conference. You guys should work for SPSS.
Oh, I wish. I guess you could say that we provide forward-looking information so you can make better decisions and take action. But SPSS went and said it first.
it is no secret I love this woman. So I guess we'll see you later tonight then, all right?
Later tonight. Oh, right. There's some sort of reception or something, right?
Some sort of reception. That's a good one, Rob. No, it's only at the Acroteria, the trendiest venue on the Apollo coast. Not to mention food in an open bar.
Okay. All right, hold up there, mister. Okay, I do not want you getting too tipsy. Last night at the opening reception, he bet some poor CIOs here for 2 hours talking about web analytics.
I was networking.
All right, well, it was nice meeting you two, and I'm going to head over to the product experience room and sign up one of those demonstrations, okay? I'll see you two later, all right?
Okay, come on. All right, but if not, we'll see you in November.
I'm sorry, November. What's in November?
North American directions. Oh, but don't even sign up for the raffle. The wife and I are going to win that trip to Las Vegas at the closing reception on Wednesday.
No, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you.
I'm actually going to take off.
Okay.
See you guys later.
All right.
All right. Okay. Cheers.
Bye, Rob. Bye, Rob.